Hey everybody, Brian Zane here. I apologize for the weird lighting in this room. I guess you could say it's kind of spooky lighting. It's kind of creepy. Makes sense because I'm talking about Hell in a Cell. The show just wrapped up. I'm going to give you my review of it. I am on the road. I'm actually on my vacation right now, but I'm not going to let that stop me from reviewing this fine pile of a show. Let me ask you this question. You start happening to you when you've got a big test coming up in class and it's the day of the test and you realize you haven't studied for it at all. So at the last second you just try and remember some things you did in the past, like some correct answers in other pop quizzes, and hope that applies to the quiz, the big test itself, and you hope you pass. That, I think, is what happened with WWE this weekend, because only 4 matches from this show were actually announced with any kind of foresight beforehand. Only on Sunday afternoon do we get the bulk of this card announced and actually put to paper. It's like, here, these matches are actually happening. It seems that, the company was so focused on premiere week between, Raw and NXT and Smackdown on Fox that, oh my god, I forgot we had a pay-per-view this Sunday. We better put some shit together, make all the rematches. And rematches we got on this evening, the first of which took place in the one and only kickoff match as Lacey Evans took on Natalya. The two trade some butt slaps early on. Lacey goes for the sharpshooter fairly often, but Natalya is able to fight out of it a couple times. Deliberate is the word I would use to describe this matchup here. They both take their time doing a lot of stuff, especially Lacey. I mean, that makes sense. Lacey's a heel, so I think, certain heel characters do work at that kind of slow down pace to try and get the crowd riled up, so when the babyface comeback happens, it's at a faster pace and the crowd is alive for it, but that's basically the speed we went with here. Natalya does evade the marrow salt, puts her in the sharpshooter, the good-looking one, and makes Lacey tap out. She does exact a bit of revenge on her in the match, then after the bell, even hits her with the women's right for good measure. I give this one 2 stars out of 5. It was a good match, though not their best in the series, and by this point, I think it's time for these two to finally move on from each other. I thought the match they had last week on Raw was it, after the decisive victory Lacey had, and her being 2-1 on Natalya. But now we had to get one more in there, so now it's definitely even Steven, 50-50 booking, yay! The show officially opens with a rematch I actually cared about, the first of 2 Hell in a Cell matches in Big Red for the 2nd year in a row. Becky Lynch defends the Raw Women's title against Sasha Banks, red versus blue. You know how it goes. The match begins before the cell actually makes it all the way down as Sasha starts fighting Becky on the outside. We get all the weapons here. There's a chair, there's a ladder, kendo sticks, a table's brought out, big Meteora onto Becky, into the ladder, in the corner. That looked especially devastating. Sasha slamming Becky's arm into the cell door, working the arm repeatedly. Becky does make a big comeback, hits the Beck-sploder into the cell wall. This is definitely the biggest spot of the match here. Becky sets up a chair propped up by some kendo sticks that are hanging horizontally in the corner, kind of like a big high chair basically. She sits Sasha up on the chair, drop kicks her off the apron into the corner. That spot is absolutely brilliant. Sasha with a big Meteora through the table. After that though, Becky kicks out. Becky just clatters the hell out of Sasha with a kendo stick. Then Sasha runs Becky into a conveniently placed wall chair. You know how often you see those hanging off walls. Many more chairs are brought into the ring. Becky hits a second rope Beck-sploder onto the pile. We get to disarm her. Sasha taps, and Becky retains the title. It's a really fun match. I think it's my pick for the best women's match of the year in the company so far, and there's been a few good ones especially. I would also say this is probably a better Hell in a Cell, a women's Hell in a Cell match I should say, than the one they had before with Charlotte and Sasha Banks. I was very pleasantly surprised at the amount of innovation and the creative use of weapons they had. Again, especially the Meteora into the corner on the ladder, and then also the high chair with the steel chair and the kendo sticks. I think the biggest shock for me in this matchup was that Sasha lost. I think this was her time to win. I think especially when you consider now she is 0-2 in big pay-per-view matches since her return. I think she definitely needed that win. Now, it's still great for Becky to win. I think it's the most legit she's looked in quite some time as women's champion, so she needed that win as well. But I think it's one thing to have, your baby faces built strong, but you gotta have your yin with your yang. You gotta have your heels look strong as well. And that doesn't just mean having them win in the build up to this. I think they also need to win some of the big matches when it counts as well. So kind of surprised, kind of disappointed that Sasha didn't win. Maybe we will get that, 2-woman power trip between her and Bayley at some point, but not tonight. Roman Reigns teams up with Daniel Bryan, a bit of an unlikely partnership here as they take on the non-mallet-wielding Bludgeon Brothers, Erick, Rowan, and Luke Harper. But don't worry, the mallet's going to come into play much later into the show. It's also tornado tag rules. I think that's kind of a nice change of pace. I think we were all kind of expecting traditional tag team match for this one, but I think the tornado aspect of it really played to all of their strengths. The basic format of this match was there's a lot of 2-on-1 stuff. The big baddie's beating up Roman, beating up Daniel, taking turns doing one or the other. We got a lot of that kind of stuff, and we had some occasional transition spots with all 4 guys in there, but then kind of settled back into a 2-on-1 scenario. Action moves to the outside. Harper hits a big dive to the outside onto Reigns, hits his face right on the announce table in the process. Rowan menacingly breaks a pencil. Ooh, so evil. They go for a double powerbomb on Bryan on the announce tables, but Daniel hits a Hurricane Rana on Harper. Spear to Rowan through the table by Roman Reigns. That was a pretty impressive sequence there. At the end of the match, Daniel gets hucked around by Harper in the ring, lands on his feet after a 3rd Dragon Suplex attempt. Roman hits the Superman punch. Bryan with the knee, still not down. The spear, Roman and D-Bry win this matchup here. 3 stars out of 5 is what I give this one. Like I said, I think the 2-on-1 aspect of the first part of the match kind of like, it felt kind of uninspired, that first portion of it. But then I think once things moved to the outside, things kicked into like a 2nd and 3rd gear. The final third of the match I thought was spectacular work by all 4 guys. Like I said, I think that the tornado aspect of this match, I think really helped elevate the match and made it better than I think it would have been on paper were it a traditional just 2-on-2 with proper tag team match. Randy Orton takes on Ali up next. One of the many matches that was thrown into the card at the last minute, but this one actually does have some story to it. You know, it goes all the way back to the Elimination Chamber when Orton legitimately injured Ali, which allowed that spot to be taken up by Kofi Kingston, and now you know the rest of the story with that one. Early in the match, Ali goes for a top rope maneuver, but Orton dumps him to the outside. Orton imposing his will for a good long time with some hope spots here and there by Ali. He eventually makes his comeback, dives to the outside onto Orton. At some point, Ali gets this big freaking welt on his torso. It's not pretty. Big honking tornado DDT by Ali too. Also does a dope-ass counter out of the RKO into a roll-up and a 2 count. Orton does hit the RKO soon enough afterward, gives kind of a knowing nod like, okay, you beat me for one moment, but I got you back. Covers and wins the thing. Even though, like I said, there is a backstory to this and these do have a history and it's kind of legit, I don't think this is a feud or a storyline that's really been like brought to prominence in the last few weeks. I feel they had to really put this back in the microwave in order to reheat the heat, so to speak. Nothing really crazy or out of the ordinary in this matchup except for the aforementioned dope-ass counter to the RKO. That was really cool. He can't necessarily bust that out every week though. This was, but that's kind of the overarching theme with this show. There's a lot of matches where they're kind of like they're revived at the last minute in order to drum up some kind of heat, or they're just rematches to matches we already saw a while ago that also kind of came out of nowhere and then they were kind of forgotten about. Speaking of which, Women's Tag Team Championship match up next as Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross defend against the Kabuki Warriors. These 2 teams had a really good match for the belts a few weeks ago actually on Raw, so I was actually really excited to see this match happen again on pay-per-view. Between Asuka and Alexa Bliss, a lot of like good contact being made on the strikes with all these ladies here. One of my favorite spots is super subtle. Kairi does the plank walk right into a boop into the eyes of Nikki Cross in the corner. We get a hot tag. Sane goes for the big elbow but lands hard on the legs of Cross. Bliss dives onto Sane on the outside. Asuka with a green mist onto Cross. When's the last time you saw that on programming? The big kick to the head. The Kabuki Warriors win the Women's Tag Team Championships. I give this one 3.5 stars out of 5. I thought it was already a good match to begin with and then elevated severely thanks to that awesome finish with Asuka spitting the poison mist into Nikki's face. So completely unexpected, and I loved how it ended there. Also really cool to see the Kabuki Warriors finally get their due. They, I think, got the short end of the stick in their very long yet also very short-lived feud with the Iconics over the championships a couple of months ago, and I think it's good to finally see them with the belts now. Probably like the most legitimate team, even though they were also kind of thrown together. I think that they're probably the most badass team to have won the belts at this point. I kind of feel bad for Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss because I was warming up to the angle, but I always thought they were missing a little bit of an element to really get their characters over a bit more. I've been saying this on Who Wore It Better for a long time. I wanted to see more kind of vignettes with them really showing their characters. I don't think we really got that except for a couple of, pre-match interviews here and there. So where is that team going to end up now? They don't have the belts. Who can say? But I think it was a good match, and yeah, the finish was awesome. 6-man tag match up next as all 3 members of the OC take on the Viking Raiders and a mystery partner revealed to be Braun Strowman. I thought for sure it was going to be Cedric Alexander, just keep that going. But this feud between the OC and the Viking Raiders is part of the seemingly endless and obviously one-sided feud between the two. The Viking Raiders have had Anderson and Gallows' number quite often in the last several weeks. Erick taking lots of punishment in the ring before Strowman gets the hot tag, but the OC worked the leg and then triple team Braun, forcing the ref to throw out the match. The Beard Boys win via DQ, which I think is kind of weak. After the bell, the Vikings dive on Anderson and Gallows on the outside. Styles wants some more of Braun, but he gets picked out of the sky with a right hand, and just like that, his leg no longer hurts. Strowman then poses with his fist in the air, kind of making a statement to Tyson Fury before their inevitable confrontation at Crown Jewel. And I also loved AJ selling afterwards, where he's clearly out of it. He has no idea where he is or what day it is or what city he is in. Pretty funny selling there by Styles. I give this one 2 stars out of 5. I think it was kind of a decent match and then bogged down by a lame finish. And really the only purpose of this match was to further promote the feud between Strowman and Tyson Fury, which began this past Friday on SmackDown. I'm going to go a little sidebar here about Tyson Fury and Cain Velasquez's involvement this past Friday. As someone who doesn't watch or care about, MMA or boxing, I don't really care that these guys are involved in the product. It means nothing to me, even though I do understand they are big names in their respective fields. So I think from a business standpoint, that could draw money. But, the purist in me thinks that this just takes away focus from, the wrestlers and the ones who should be promoted. But maybe, maybe back if I were watching wrestling in, early 1998, I might have thought the same thing about Mike Tyson being involved with Steve Austin. And we all saw how that turned out. I'm not saying that Velasquez and Fury are going to get that same kind of business, but having that kind of crossover appeal is probably good for the company, at least in the short term. And I am actually I'm far more excited about a match between Cain Velasquez and Lesnar than I am with Strowman and Tyson Fury. Not only do Velasquez and Lesnar have the history in UFC, but Velasquez actually have some match experience. Like, he's wrestled in Mexico. He's got, the experience under his belt, and he genuinely seems like a fan and he wants to be there and he has the passion. I don't know what Fury's interested in pro wrestling. I don't know if he was just paid a lot of money to do it. But whereas Velasquez, I could definitely see some chemistry and maybe see something happen, like he and Lesnar doing good business in the wrestling ring. It's just too bad it's happening on a pay-per-view I have absolutely no desire to watch. The Street Profits are backstage hyping up this week's draft, and all of a sudden R-Truth and Carmella bump into them. Tamina, we haven't seen her in forever. She rolls up Carmella from behind and pins her to become the new 24/7 champion. She runs off, and wow, 2 new sets of female champions in one night. And you know what? Spoiler alert, we're not done yet. In your night of rematches, King Corbin takes on Chad Gable, who he is now, via proclamation, rechristened Shorty Gable, and bafflingly, they are running with it. It's not just a thing where the heels are calling him that, like Corbin and Corey Graves. Like, no, like, they're just, that's his, canonically, that's his name now. And so that is where we are in 2019. Although I will say it's kind of cool that the STD chant The Rock started on Friday has made its way onto this show. And kudos to Corey Graves, because he actually runs with it on commentary, calling him a vicious dude, a VD. I see what you did there, Corey. Gable gets beat down for a long time, but he's got some fire left in him. He talks big trash to Corbin, who's down on his knees, before Chad hits the Chaos Theory and a 2 count. Gable's working over Corbin now, wrapping his leg around the ring post multiple times. Corbin hits a deep 6 in the ring and a chokeslam on the apron. He grabs his scepter and goes to the kill, but Gable avoids it and rolls up Corbin for the win, and Greg Hamilton actually refers to him as Shorty Gable when he wins. My God, they're actually going through this thing. I give this one 2.5 stars out of 5. Nothing we haven't seen from these two before. I think their finals match a few weeks ago for the King of the Ring tournament was better than this one. This one was still okay, still told a good story, but I think I was more excited by the one they had several weeks ago. And man, how sad is it that even when Corbin's getting a push, he still can't win matches? Up next, the role model. Bayley defends the SmackDown Women's Championship against Charlotte Flair, who's looking to become a 10-time Women's Champion. Before the row by R-Truth. We get a face-off between Truth and Funaki, one of the Japanese announcers, and Funaki pulls out some of the Kung Funaki moves to get a bit of a pop. Tamina turns around, eats a kick from Carmella, then in a bit of a selfless move, Carmella tells Truth to go for the cover. He does, and he wins back the 24/7 title for the 20th time. I would have absolutely flipped my shit if Funaki won, though. Bayley gains the advantage early on after an eye rake. She works Charlotte's leg for the bulk of this thing. She goes to the figure 4, which then gives Charlotte the opening to come back. She hits the natural selection, but we get a rope break. At some point in this comeback, Charlotte's mouth gets busted open, though. A moonsault, but Bayley gets the knees up. Later on, Bayley tries to pin Dirty, but the referee catches her. Charlotte hits the big boot, the figure 8, and for the second time in 3 nights, Bayley taps out and Charlotte wins that aforementioned 10th women's title. I give this one 3 stars out of 5. It's really hard to compete with the opening match we got with Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks, but I think these two did a really good job in their own right. Not a good night for the Boss and Hug connection. Again, it's a great corporate move to have your two top female baby faces winning the championships in their respective brands. It's good momentum going into the draft when they're going to be, on separate shows once again. But, again, it's not that great when I think you have to build up competent female heels. And you just had your two top female heels lose in dramatic fashion on this night. So, again, where do you go with these two? Do you have them eventually win rematches to get the titles back? Who's to say? But yeah, that's kind of the one negative I got from these two matches. The two women's title matches were both great in their own rights. I think the Hell in a Cell match obviously was superior. But yeah, I feel bad for Sasha and Bayley in this one. Also worth pointing out, after the match, Bayley is throwing a big hissy fit on the outside of the ring after losing. She says, "Why does this always happen to me?" We actually get some na hey hey goodbye chants from the crowd, which is a huge shock because, even though she's a heel, they are in Sacramento, which is by proxy practically the same thing as San Jose. So they're always usually cheering for her, and she was getting some babyface pops in this match by the virtue of her being in California. But no, they actually kind of turn on her at the end here. So I wonder where that tantrum's going to lead. Backstage, Chad Shorty Gable's interviewed about his match. He says he finally shut King Corbin up and that on this night he was the bigger man. But then King Corbin jumps him and beats the hell out of him. At least he gets some of his heat back, and I guess we're going to see another match between these two in the very near future. In your main event, Seth Rollins defends the Big Red Belt against the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, in Hell in a Cell, and I've got a lot to say about how this thing ended, but let's just get through the actual match itself first. One of the big defining things about this match is we got the big, spooky red lighting for the entire duration of this matchup here. Rollins grabs a kendo stick early on and whacks Wyatt with it, but Bray no-sells. Before he begins to work Seth over, Rollins makes a comeback, hits some dives into the cell wall, but again, the story here is that Bray is this unkillable beast, and he cannot be slowed down by Seth's mere mortal attacks. Sister Abby into the wall. Bray setting up a table, but Seth gets him on it and hits a frog splash through it. Bray is unaffected by that or the stomp right afterward. Another Sister Abby, and Seth kicks out. And here's the thing. We have several minutes to go in this matchup. This is the first of what will be many false finishes, but already the crowd is turning on it. That is going to be this is a pivotal point in this matchup, and things just go downhill from there. Back on the outside, Bray produces a giant cartoon mallet from under the ring, the same one he crushed Ramblin' Rabbit with and made strawberry jam out of. Seth fights back, hits the stomp on the mallet. Seth then spams Bray with all the big moves, including 3 stomps. The crowd is starting to hate this until Bray gets back up again, which gets a big pop, a pedigree, another stomp. Bray kicks out at 1, which gets one of the biggest pops of the night. Even more stomps. Seth whomps him with a chair. Bray kicks out at 1 again. Seth smashes the chair on the Fiend's face to the ladder, a kick out at 2. Seth is just completely dominating Bray here. He's just beating him down with more weapons, more stomps, more kicks. The fans are shitting all over this one. He grabs a sledgehammer from under the ring, and the referee tells him not to use it. It's Hell in a Cell. What are you doing, referee? Sure enough, Seth hits Bray with the sledgy with all the weapons on top. The referee DQs him for reasons. The fans chant bullshit, as well they should have. And then after the match is over, the EMTs come down to check on Bray. Seth stands over him, and we suddenly get this big Jason Voorhees moment where he mandibles Seth out of nowhere. Makes you wonder why he didn't do that in the match proper before the bell rang. A massive restart the match chant from the crowd as Bray exposes the concrete floor. Another Sister Abby on the floor, and a big AE dub chant for that as well. Another mandible claw, Seth spitting out ketchup. The Fiend stands tall. The show cuts to black and a chorus of boos. Such good shit, pal. This match did get 4 stars out of 5 up until the 12th or 13th stomp, and then I downgraded it to 1 star out of 5. Maybe it was a bit optimistic for us as a fan base to assume Bray was going to win the title on this night. Our bad, I guess. I'm really surprised at the number of people who are online defending this bullshit because they're saying, well, they had backed themselves into a corner. Did you really think Bray was going to win the championship? Like, yeah, it would have been nice, would have been different, would have been surprising to have something like this, but instead you've got 2 years in a row where your Hell in a Cell main event in the Cell match ends in a disqualification, which completely goes against your entire logic you spent the last 20 some odd years building for Hell in a Cell. 1 year, okay, that was an anomaly. That was just kind of a freak incident, never happened again. No, we were skunked again. In fact, we were spoiled this weekend when they had a poll online saying, how do you think the match is going to end? And they put DQ as an option. Well, that's how you know what's going to happen. They couldn't commit to it. They couldn't pull the trigger on Bray Wyatt actually winning. And so what you have now is complete, I think, you've killed his mystique. It only took 2 official matches, but you completely killed the mystique of Bray Wyatt, the Fiend. Because even if he wins the championship in a rematch, it's going to be too late because this bullshit happened. I don't understand how you would do this. Again, with the logic of how they booked this match. If one kind of hammer doesn't get you disqualified, but another one does, then the whole logic of this matchup and how you book things and how you tell stories and how you build your world is irrevocably fucked up. And there needs to be some kind of hard reset because this is, I'm not one for hyperbole, but this is the single dumbest thing I've seen all year. And there's been a few dumb things in the world of wrestling, but this has to take the cake. This is absolute bullshit. Some people are saying, well, if Bray won here, then what would happen at Survivor Series when he wrestles Brock Lesnar? He'd lose then. Or, hear me out, maybe they could have done this instead. Maybe at that second Sister Abigail in the ring, when Seth first kicks out and the fans start booing right then and start turning on it right then, that'd be the point in where Bray wins the belt in shocking fashion. And then you've got this contrived bullshit finish that you had here on this night, and you save that for Survivor Series so both he and Lesnar can save face and no one really loses. Maybe do something like that. I don't know. It just... I'm being redundant. I'm repeating myself. I'm saying bullshit a lot because it is. I'm frustrated. It's really frustrating. Hell in a Cell, the one that ends in a DQ. That'd be the tagline for Hell in a Cell from here on out. Because you're already 2 years in, you might as well keep this trend going. From a visual standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, I actually didn't mind the whole thing. I didn't mind the spooky red lighting. I didn't mind, Seth just beating the hell out of Bray until he was almost dead. Then he has the big Freddy Krueger moment or Jason Voorhees moment at the end. I get why they did it. I just think the timing of it was bad. I think it flopped. The fans shit all over that thing. They were not having it. Justin Henry of Cultaholic said it best on Twitter that they could have had live mics and plugged AEW Dynamite to the lineup for that week, and it wouldn't have been as good a commercial for that show as that finish was on Sunday. In one fell swoop, they've killed the mystique of The Fiend, they've killed the mystique of Hell in a Cell after 2 years in a row of this, because God forbid you have a conclusive finish, God forbid you actually pull the trigger on something interesting and different and would have got people talking. Who cares if the title change here would be too close to when Kofi dropped it on Friday? Maybe you need some good upheaval. You're going into this new era where you've got, the shows on 2 different networks and you're having a draft. Fucking go with it. Just do it. Why wouldn't you do something like that? There are so many words I could use to describe the awfulness of this main event. And Lord knows I've tried to come up with some more of them, but I'm just tired right now. I'm burned out. I'm bummed out from the ending of that show. Again, maybe I was hoping too hard for Bray to win clean. Maybe they would have found some way for something to happen. Like in the back of my mind, I had the feeling there was going to be a DQ finish, but I didn't really expect them to do it 2 years in a row. I'm just glad I have the rest of my vacation to look forward to. Hopefully this night won't bum me out for the rest of my time here. You had one great match. You had a few good matches that we'd already seen before in previous pay-per-views and Raws, often done better. And then you had one main event that started out really interesting and really captivating, but then totally fell off a cliff, and then the fans very predictably turned on it. This show felt like it was the last thing on the company's mind. It felt like it was something that was booked at the last minute. It felt like a show where half the card was announced the day of. Do you feel me? One of the surprising gems of this show was like, wow, how much they're pushing the ladies. You've got the Sasha Becky match, you've got the Bayley Charlotte match, and even you've got Tamina and Carmella doing some stuff, and the Women's Tag Team Championship match. Like those points were all like really strong points in the show, but then like everything else is just like, what happened to this thing? The wheels, I felt like came off. But enough about me. What did you think of Hell in a Cell 2019? What did you think of that perplexing, bizarre ending to the pay-per-view? Let me know in the comments section below, and be sure to give it a letter grade by going to the iCard in the corner of your screen. Quick programming note, as I mentioned last week on the Raw review, there will not be a Raw review this week because I am on vacation. I had to pick and choose what shows I was going to review. I said I was going to review Hell in a Cell, which now in hindsight I regret, and I'm going to review NXT and AEW Dynamite for Wednesday Warfare, but because of the obligations I have being here on vacation, sadly no Raw review, but I hope you guys can bear with me, and next week it will come back. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time. How much they're pushing the ladies. Totally fell off a cliff, and then bullshit a lot because it is a trigger on Bray Wyatt. Bullshit as well they should have. The fans chant bull.